Welcome, everybody. This is SharePoint Monthly Community Call at June 2021. It is June 8th, 2021. Yes, that's kind of repeating things. Now, funny enough, now that I'm thinking this is actually the last SharePoint Monthly Community Call, and I'll come back on that one. It doesn't mean that we will not talk about SharePoint and functionalities and features in future. We will, but we will have a summer break, and then we'll introduce a slightly different call cycle within the Microsoft 365 areas, and that's based on the input and feedback what we got from the community as well, and gives us more flexibility. I'll explain what it means in practice after a few slides. Anyway, today we're going to recap some SharePoint related news. What is the SharePoint Framework roadmap? We're going to have a recap on the community contributors, so who has been active around our community within the past month. We'll do a quick picture time as well, so quick group photo of all of the people who are joining, and then we'll have the real show and real stars of the day, who will be Melissa Torres and Nicole Woon, taking like 40 minutes of the time. So I will eat up like 15 minutes in the intro in my monologue. Well, technically David is going to talk a bit as well, and then we'll focus on the stars of the day. And then if time permits, we'll have a Q&A in the end. Now, let's actually get going on the slides. Few recap slides, which we always keep on this presentation. So we have two different YouTube channels. We have the Microsoft 365 Developer Videos YouTube channel if you are into the development side of the house, and that's the official developer videos coming from cloud advocates or from marketing. All of our community videos, recordings, community call recordings, and all of the community demos are now centralized in the Microsoft 365 community video channel. So we're kind of repositioning these two channels, and that community video channel also has non-developer topics, so more makers and builders and all of that kind of functionalities. Now, we also have a lot of open source assets available in a GitHub from multiple different organizations, which you might want to check out, but quite often, if you go to the GitHub, you get overwhelmed by having too many GitHub repositories. You can't find what you're looking for, and that's the reason why we have the sample galleries available. So if you're looking into getting started on SharePoint framework development, there's more than 400 samples available for it. If you're looking into getting started on Microsoft Teams development, there's more than 100 samples available for it. If you're looking into getting started on list formatting and understanding those things, a lot of samples available as well. And these are really intended for you to take advantage, so don't start from scratch. Have a look on the sample, how to get moving, how to get started, and then adapt the sample based on your requirements. If you're wondering that there's too many URLs to remember already in this slide, there's the one URL on the right side, which is AKMS N365 PnP, where you can access all of the community call links, details, assets, SDKs, YouTube channels, and all of that location from one single URL. Now, when we started, I kind of mentioned that we're going to slightly do a quick adjustments in our community call structure. And we kind of showed this in the upcoming community calls this week and next week, so during June. But first of all, most of these calls will have a summer break. So during July and August, we will not have SharePoint community calls, Microsoft Teams community calls, or Microsoft Craft community calls at least. Maybe some of the other monthly calls will happen. We're still negotiating and making sure that everybody's up to date. And then the Thursday calls will happen, just to be super clear on that. So the monthly calls will be on summer break, but Thursday community style calls will happen as planned. Now, after the summer break, since we have so many calls, and it's really hard to always kind of know when the call happens and on which time, we're looking into consolidating. So what we're planning to do is this. We are at least combining the SharePoint, Microsoft Craft, Microsoft Teams, and identity calls and potentially adaptive card calls to one single recurrent call, which is happening every single Tuesday at 8 a.m. Pacific time. So on Tuesdays, we will have the engineering call, which is primarily for engineering to update what's happening, engineering people like today, Melissa or Nicole, doing demos on the new features. And then on Thursday, we'll keep the call for community demos. So this way you'll know the let's say, which call to take, and you are 100% sure when the call will actually happen. Now, We're still having, let's say, discussions on which of the calls are getting merged on the Tuesday one. So it might be that, as an example, the Power Apps one will remain as an independent one because they want to keep their existing call. But we're still, all of that details is getting sorted out during the summer break as well. So this is good to be aware that we're doing this consolidation. One of the key points here also is that from our perspective, all of this is part of the Microsoft 365. So why are we even isolating these calls from a specific product perspective? Because, for example, Microsoft Viva is a good example. It's a product around Microsoft Teams, SharePoint, SPFX, and Graph. So why wouldn't we just combine and have calls which are more relevant for you? Now, will you have to re-register for the new calls? The Thursday calls will actually keep as they are. We're not going to touch them. The Tuesday call is going to be a new one which we'll introduce, and we'll do updated downloads and all of that after summer break. So we do apologize on this change. We've been doing existing model now for 6 years, so we're trying to consolidate and make this more efficient in the future. Cool. Anyway, and we'll update, of course, the information in the PnP side as well and the community side as well. Now, a few other updates from the engineering side and from the Microsoft side. Please, if you're interested, if you're a developer, you're interested in starting building extensibility for Microsoft Viva, we have a private preview, which isn't that private. So maybe the naming is even slightly misleading because technically we'll accept every single submission and every single developer who's interested in starting building on the Viva Connections. After they submit their registration using this form, which is HTTPS, AKMS Viva Connections Preview Register. It's a pretty long URL. Technically, what that will give you is that it will ask you the URL, your test tenant URL, where you want to test out the features, and it will ask you the GitHub account, which you want to use for accessing the preview bits of SharePoint Framework 1.13. So through this channel, you will then get access on the next version of SharePoint Framework, and you can start building those cards, which you can see in the mobile experience in here. So that's a really good, let's say, future step and a good opportunity for developers to get ready what will be available later this summer globally for customers as well. I guess it's summer, maybe autumn. I'm watching Melissa's face if I'm actually saying this in the wrong time. No, she's smiling. Okay, that's a good sign. So let's move on. Now, so a few other URLs and updates. So if you're looking into getting started on SPFX development, just to recap, AKMS SPFX web parts is the easiest way to get started on that. So there's like 250 samples available. So don't start from scratch. There's awesome stuff available contributed by community, and you can contribute as well. So we're looking always contributions from the community to these galleries and samples so that we can help each other as part of this journey on learning and building extensibility for Microsoft 365. Related on that one, if you're not super familiar with all of the extensibility options in the Microsoft 365, have a look on our Microsoft 365 Extensibility Lookbook. And this is basically designed to showcase what are the different options of doing extensibility in Microsoft 365. So you can actually have a look on from a product perspective, from a scenario perspective, from a types of apps perspective, what are the things what you can actually build. And from this location, we will then link the videos and documentation and additional assets so you can actually easily get started on building stuff. So it's a really, really cool way of approaching how would I learn to do extensibility in Microsoft 365. Now, one additional thing which is cool to follow is the new PnP Community, a site in the tech community. There's a lot of views, a lot of activities here. We have moved all of our community call recordings, community initiative messaging to this blog post. And the easiest way to get there is AKMS M365 PnP/community/blog. And that's where you can see quite often actually numerous entries and blog posts from the community even on a day-to-day basis, which is really, really cool. And by the way, if you're interested, you can also write and publish your articles to that location. So we have instructions in that site, how you can actually submit your own articles here. You can do, let's say, double posting to your own blog post and your own blog, and then also in here to get some additional views for your articles as well. So again, we're trying to make sure that if you want to contribute, you can contribute in a way that we will surface your stuff in the front of everybody else, so that they will get more views. That's the whole idea. Now, on other areas which we are working on, maybe it's just easier to throw it to David, and David can explain what the sharing is caring is all about.
Absolutely. Thank you, Vesa. Well, we've seen a lot of resources that are available to everyone in the community. It can be a little overwhelming though, right, friends? So we want you to know that this is an absolutely open source and inclusive community, which means that you're free to use any of those resources as well as contribute back to the resources. But we understand there can be some hurdles, some fear, first time maybe using GitHub, first time maybe presenting. Well, Sharing is Caring is an initiative that is here to provide you hands-on guidance through a number of these processes. We're going to be in safe space sessions. They're not recorded. They're completely free, open for you to ask any and all questions without any fear of it being recorded and shared amongst the community. So it's very collaborative. A lot of the community has been joining. You can see the span and spectrum of session topics there for the upcoming sessions. In fact, today, right after this call, is the Microsoft Graph and Microsoft Graph Toolkit Ask Me Anything with Sebastian Levert and Beth Pan. So feel free to join. They're all free. You can register. We have them all month long. So we invite you to enjoy and sign up for any of them at aka.ms/sharingiscaring. Hope to see you soon. Vesa, back to you.
Excellent. Thank you, David. Please take advantage of this option, because they are, like David said, super inclusive. We're not assuming you know anything about technology when you're joining these things. Everybody is welcome. We will help you to get started on this journey. If you want to start, for example, contributing on a GitHub or in the docs, or just consuming the samples, or if you have any questions related on different topics, just join and ask the questions. Everybody is 100% welcome. Now, a few other assets and classic things which we always recap in here. PnP Weekly is our weekly show where we always go through the latest changes and latest updates on the Microsoft 365 platform, but not only on platforms like in Teams and in SharePoint and in Microsoft Viva as well. If you're interested on the video blocking side, that's in the YouTube channel, and then there's a podcast option as well. We typically have a visitor in the show, which we then talk about his or her career and the development and what they are doing and all of that stuff. So there's a lively discussion together with the latest updates from Microsoft and community. So quite nice show. If you're more interested on a deep dive on the developer side of the house, we also have the Microsoft 365 Developer Podcast hosted by Jeremy Thake and Paul Schaffelane. Really great show related on the technology and developer aspects in the Microsoft 365 as well. Now, quick recap on the UserVoice. Not actually that many changes in here, and the number of votes are increasing. For the number one, which is to enable renaming of SharePoint tenant domain, I think it's safe to say that we actually have progress, but unfortunately, that's still in the private preview stage. So we are progressing related on enabling renaming of SharePoint Online tenants sooner or later. So it is gradually moving. All of the other things, absolutely, there's a focus on them, and there's a engineering efforts in most of these areas for sure. In general, related on UserVoice, just to recap, and this one, if you haven't heard, we as a Microsoft, we are moving away from the UserVoice platform gradually during the 2021 calendar year. So some of the products have already moved to temporary solution or a long-term solution, and you'll see most of us moving to a first-party provided platform relatively soon. We are not going to lose any of the votes. We're not going to lose any of your input related on the functionalities which you need. So as part of this transition, we will take all of that information with us. On the SharePoint developer side of the house, nothing really new here. Again, the number one item is being the classic, how can we enable extensibility on SharePoint lists using the SharePoint framework. It is actively being looked on. It is not being developed, so I can actually provide you that input right now, but it's being basically, it's hanging between the line. Is it going to land on the next half, finally getting actually enabled? Please keep on voting. It's super important for our internal prioritization to know what do you need for you to be successful. And same obviously here, we are moving into the new platform later this year. Now, on the SharePoint framework side, we have a separate call on the SharePoint framework, which is the bi-weekly one on Thursdays. But a quick recap in here, SharePoint framework is focusing on the Viva Connections. So join the preview, you will get access on early bits. You will then know how to build Viva connection cards and do extensibility in Microsoft Viva. It is a big focus area for Microsoft within upcoming 12 months at least. Well, probably even more than that. It's typically not just 12 months. Now, into SPFX also Teams improvements, Teams integration improvements. In general, SharePoint is getting more and more paired with Microsoft Teams. You can see that in multiple segments. From a development perspective, there's a lot of tooling improvements coming on the SharePoint framework, targeting Microsoft Teams and making all that easier. And then relatively soon, we will have completely modernized SharePoint Store, which we hope that will enable more and more partners to submit SharePoint framework solutions to the store as well. As part of this one, not officially yet communicated and announced and no dates, but we are gradually deprecating SharePoint add-in model. So it's good to be aware of that as well. Primarily first in the store, and then sooner or later at some point also in the SharePoint Online. So we're moving away from the classic 10 years old SharePoint add-in model to SharePoint framework, which is already 20 times more widely used worldwide than the add-in model, just to be clear on that. Now, we will communicate, of course, all of the timelines and dates and all of that as they have been decided, but good to know on that one beforehand. Now, quick recap also on the community side of the house. We had all-time record actually on the community contributors this month again. So thank you everybody on that one. I will publish a blog post where we will have all of the names who contributed in the GitHub or in the blogs or in the videos later today or early tomorrow. But I also already have all of those names in this slide. So we had quite a significant number of people actively involved within the past month. So we needed to, again, decrease the font on this slide. Maybe I will need to split that now, the list of people to 3 slides. So I'm still using 2-slide mode and decreasing the font. And I can see one additional row there, actually, which is one way of squeezing in. But that's the from A to K, and then some K to Y people in this slide as well. So a lot of people who've been actively involved, either doing blog posts, article updates, documentation updates, component updates, samples, and there's multiple ways of getting involved in our community. From a company perspective, it is a pretty similar set of companies and similar set name of the companies which we have permission to show. So these are the companies from which the previous persons work for and which we have a permission to show the company name. So we will need to have explicit permission to show the company logo and company name in the slides before we do that. But we will always want to thank these companies as well, that they allow their employees to contribute for behalf of the others in the community. So being able to work in an open source, building stuff together with the community is a really great way of enabling employees to even be more engaged. Now, from a Microsoft side of the house, a pretty similar set of group of people, a lot of people here as well, and it is gradually growing, which is great. So we're seeing more people actively involved in our community channels. Some of these people are leading, for example, Microsoft Graph Toolkit, which is an open source initiative, or some of our PnP work activities. Now, before we go to the demo of the day, let's do a quick group photo. So for those who are interested, you can enable your video, and I will start actually the recording beforehand because I can edit the output. And then I will move the video. I will first of all change the scene. Let's do that one. And let's move you in here. And let's wait until we hit the maximum 50. I think we're hitting closely to 50. A lot of people in the room. Let's do some hand waving, everybody. Thanks, everybody. Awesome to see all of the people in the community. Thank you for being part of this. Thanks, everybody. We'll clip a quick GIF animation on that one. Thanks, everybody. Really awesome. Maybe by end of this year, we'll get the actual conferences, well, except right now there is a conference ongoing in Orlando, which is a hybrid one. And I know that there are people there, which is pretty cool. I think we are getting past this weird situation sooner or later. But let's actually go to the real stars of the day. And let me start talking and give the stage for Melissa and Nicole.
Great. Thank you so much, Vesa, for having us. I'm Nicole Woon. I'm a PM on the SharePoint team working on site features. So excited to share a little bit more on site templates here. Today, I am joined by Melissa Torres and Matt Moody, so we'll be spending most of the time walking through the new site templates feature as well as the Q&A, and then we'll go into a discussion around customer site templates. If you have any questions during our presentation, please feel free to put it in the chat. I am operating off of one screen today, so Melissa, if you don't mind, just kind of monitoring the chat and we can bring up any of those questions later on. So you may be wondering, what are site templates? In case you haven't seen our Message Center post or any of our other publications, site templates are scenario-based templates that help showcase what's possible in SharePoint, and it makes it a whole lot easier for you to build your new site. So let's say that maybe you're managing a project with upcoming deadlines, or you might need to create an onboarding site for new hires. If you don't know where to start, site templates makes it really easy to give you that starting point and that inspiration. Additionally, all these templates leverage the existing capabilities that you already know and love from SharePoint. So things like pages, lists, libraries, navigation, branding, all of those come together to create these really beautiful templates. And we'll be starting with 9 initial ones for our first release. We have 5 for communication sites and 4 for team sites. If I go on to the next slide here, you'll see just a quick gallery of how many beautiful templates there are. And I'll be walking through how you go ahead and apply one and walking through the template itself in a quick demo. So that demo is right now. So I will go over to my site here. So this is a brand new site that I've created. We have a dialog that pops up for people who are the owners that first come to the site, and you'll see that there's an option to select Browse Templates. Now, this is one way that you can access it. The other way is through the site settings, and there's an Apply a Site Template option there. So here, I'll go ahead and click Browse Templates, and we see that it will load the template gallery. Here you can kind of scroll around. These are going to be the out-of-the-box Microsoft templates, and I'll show you from your organization tab in a separate demo. So here I'll go ahead and click on Department. This will take you to the preview for that experience, and so you'll see a preview of what that homepage might look like here. And then you'll also see ways that you might be using that, so different capabilities that are associated with the site and a brief description of how you might be able to use it. Applying the template is very straightforward. You just click the Use Template button here, and you'll see this progress pane show up where you can see how much progress is going. So they apply in a matter of seconds. We'll just wait a little bit here for that one to apply. And with that, we can see that it takes us straight to the home page. I can see that I might need a refresh here just to make sure. All right, that might be a demo bug, but what should happen is it'll take you to a home page here. I will try and pull up that one just from the site contents here. So give me one sec. But what it should do is it will bring you to a home page, and the one that I shown before, which I should be able to just bring us over here so it's a little bit easier for you to see what that looks like. But essentially, it will bring you over to a home page that allows you to just be able to have a bunch of web parts that are populated on that home page. You'll also see different web parts that you can go ahead and edit later on. Most of these are going to be pre-populated with some content that you can quickly adjust, but others, such as the news web part events, will show up as you add more content in there. Additionally, you'll see options for other subpages that are created. So for example, here we have a Who We Are page. So if I go here, we'll see that there's a leadership page that is populated. And so these give you a sense of how you might be able to use the site template itself. So giving you ideas of how to fill that out. Additionally, in some cases, you'll see that there are going to be page templates that are added as well. So if I just go to new here, you can see on this department template, we have an event summary page template and a newsletter template as well. So you, again, can see a preview there. And if you create the page, you can go ahead and edit those as needed. So adding those are pretty easy. The other thing that I wanted to point out as well is that we are bringing next steps to communication sites as well. You may have been familiar with these from our team sites, but we are kind of bringing parity across our site templates. So you can see here that these are tips that lead to kind of filling out your site and getting you started. So you'll see information about how to customize your new site, ways to share it, post news, updating the look, that sort of thing. Now I kind of gave you a preview on that next page here of our customization guidance. And so these are support articles that really help you build out and understand what is going into each of your site templates. So this you can easily access at aka.ms/sp site templates. I will show that URL a little bit later on as well. But what you can see here is some information on how you can actually apply the template. This is the detail that I mentioned before if you want to access it from site settings. And then we have these separate pages for each of the templates specifically, which is a great way to dive in and actually understand what goes into each of the templates. So you'll see that it's filtered on our communication site templates, our team site templates, and it also has some information on if you are creating some for your own organization. We also have additional FAQs at the bottom here for some of our most commonly asked questions, and I'll go over a few of those in a little bit. And then finally, we have some additional resources that may help you in building this out. So I'll swap back over to our deck here. And just to recap what I had gone through here, there are 2 entry points to access that template gallery through that dialog that I mentioned before, and then through the site settings here. Again, this is the template gallery for those that are provided by Microsoft. And then you can preview your template before applying it to your site. Template applies in a matter of seconds. And with that, it will take you to the home page where you can go ahead and start just clicking through any of the pages that have been added, as well as see some next steps for getting started. And then finally, I'd mentioned the support articles so that you can learn even more about each template. And that URL that I mentioned before, aka.ms/sp site templates, will take you to that support article. Now, the other demo that I wanted to walk through was for if you've used site designs in the past. So we have rebranded this as customer site templates. And so I will show you a brief explanation of how we have that. So again, I am on a SharePoint site. I see the option to add a template here. So I'll go ahead and browse over in the template gallery. You'll see the From Your Organization tab. And so I'll be clicking on this particular one that we have created in advance. So you can see if you have a site script, all of the script actions that will be applied are added here. So again, the process, you click on Use Template, and the page will load, and you'll see this bar that pops up at the top indicating that it's applying the site template. So if you go ahead and click on View, this will show that that process is currently in progress. So you'll have a sense of kind of when things are running. We'll go ahead and just close that for a little bit. And so that will stay in this kind of yellow notification bar state until the full template has applied. Eventually, it will transition to green. So might need to wait just a few moments for that one. But once that has applied, then you're able to kind of go over to the next page here. So here you can see that we have applied it. We clicked on Site Template here. You'll see just an update that your template has successfully been applied to the site. And then you'll also see the guidance to refresh to see any of those changes. So I refresh. You can see that, in fact, it did create any of my additional folders. We see the next steps pop up so that I have some more tips on how to continue building that out. You can see that it's added this vertical section here, at least for this particular template. But that is how you're able to use the From Your Organization part of it. So with that, I will pop over to our slides one more time here. And again, just a quick walkthrough of that. That's going to be from your organization tab here. You'll be able to preview those actions before applying the template. Again, there's a bar that will show up that indicates that it's in progress. And then when it's finished, you can see the positive green notification bar there. And then we can see that the site's been applied, and you can start making that site your own. Now, for those of you that have used site designs in the past, there are some changes, so just to be aware of. The first that I mentioned before is a bit of that rebranding piece of it. So site designs will now be referring to them in customer site templates. So if you hear that in any future planning or in any kind of publications, that's what we'll be referring to them as. Things that have already existed, such as PowerShell commandlets, those will remain as they are currently. So you probably will not see SB Site Design immediately transitioning to customer site templates or anything like that. So just for your awareness there. Additionally, as you saw in the demo, we can now access those from your organization tab in the template gallery. There's no more site designs entry point from site settings, and we are not using the dropdown that used to show up in site creation. As you saw with the gallery, when I was selecting the template in the first place, we have added support for setting a thumbnail in the template gallery there, which you can change through add or set SPO site design. Additionally, we are currently working on adding support for viewing history of previously applied templates for a particular site. So that will be following initial release. And then some of the existing functionality that we already have, which includes setting a default site template or applying a theme to site when you are associating a site to a hub, all of that still exists. Then some of the frequently asked questions that we've received. One is just, when is this going to be available to customers? We are rolling out to targeted release and general availability over the next couple months. As this is a big feature and a big change, we want to make sure that we're doing it right. So this will probably be a slightly slower release, but we want any of the feedback that all of you have to make this just a really great, robust feature. In terms of permissions that are required to apply a site template, you'll need to be a site owner or higher. And then if you wanted to disable site templates, there's currently not an option to do so. We're working on additional admin controls following release for that one. If you already have content on an existing site, but you want to add a site template to it, can you do that? Yes, you can. A heads up that your content won't automatically merge with that new template, but there is a new default homepage that's created along with other new content. So any of your existing pages, libraries, lists, information on all of those will be saved, and you can then access those in site contents. And the last question that I have on this slide is, can I undo a template that's just been applied? There's no automatic method to undo, but you are able to manually make changes. So everything that's applied through a site template, you can do manually as well. So if you could delete any pages or lists that are added, you can remove navigation items, you can update the theme through change the look. All of those actions can be taken. So I will pause here for a moment and just check in with Melissa. Any major questions that we need to address on audio?
Yeah, that's a good one. Norm asked, what happens if I apply a default site design to the site when it is created and someone applies one afterwards? Nicole, do you want to answer that? Do you want me to?
Go ahead.
So if you set up a default site design, that'll get applied first because that gets applied right after the site gets finished being provisioned. So that'll continue to work as it works today. If the user then goes and opens the apply type template and applies another one, then they're basically just applying one on top of the other one. So that's how it will work. So Norm, so it is stacking or replacing. It is stacking. So for those of you who've been following us around site scripts and site designs for quite some time, you might have heard Sean Squires back in the day talk about how these are meant to be additive. And so that means they're not meant to be destructive. So we don't replace content or we don't delete content when you apply a site design on top of a site template on top of a site template. So it just adds on. And that is an effort for us to, like I mentioned, to try to be not destructive about what you're trying to do. Yes, they are additive and not destructive. You got it. Hopefully that answered the question. This templates will work for modern or classic. These are modern only. At what point does the dialog show? Nicole, you want to take that one?
Yeah, so that will show for the first time that a site owner visits the site. So that gives them the option to either apply that template in the moment, but you also notice that there's a maybe later. If maybe you don't want to apply it now, just kind of poke around the site. So you can always apply it at any time after the site's creation.
I think I see one question that somebody asked about, can we set a default site design for all sites in the hub? Yes, and this unchanges that. So if you have a hub and you go to hub settings and you set up a site template to be applied as part of joining that hub, that'll continue to work exactly as expected, and the experience will be exactly the same. When you join a hub, you get the hub navigation, the branding, all the other features, and you'll see the yellow bar telling you the progress just like it does today. So all that stays in place. Will GCC tenants be included initial release or later? GCC for us is just part of, at the very end of general availability. So as of right now, I don't think there's any reason why we would not include this as part of GCC. So the plan is to, unless Nicole, please correct me if I'm wrong. So our plan would be that as part of rollout, this GCC would be included.
Nope, you're right.
Is there a way to take on-prem SharePoint 2013 template and migrate to Office 365, create a modern template? No, there is no way to take like an on-prem 2013 template and migrate it. If you're using classic to classic, there technically is a way for you to do that, but not to create a modern template from it. So for modern templates, this is the customer, this is what the customer site templates or the formerly known as site designs were for.
Cool, and I think I saw Mike's asked to roll back in the presentation for a slide, so hopefully this slide helps.
I was just going to say, I did really want to hit the last two bullets on this slide. So, anything you've set up in the default site template with site designs today, that'll continue to work. When applying a hub, a site template, when associated hub, that'll continue to work as well. One thing is like bullet number 2 is particularly important. So previously, for those familiar with site creation, if you go to SharePoint Start page and you click on Create Site, as part of the creation experience, after you picked a com site or a team site, you would get a drop-down option to pick between these, the different templates that were available. That experience is now gone, and so you'll create the team site, you'll create the com site. But once you land on the site, that's when we'll pop open the dialogue that Nicole was showing earlier. So that's just a change so that folks are aware.
I think Melissa had a really good question, just to be super, super clear. And Melissa, the red marker would have been completely fine on the message. It had it for a while, but she edited that. So the customer site templates are going to be deprecated eventually with these templates to replace them, or what does this mean? So let's be super, super clear for those who have invested on the existing site scripts and site designs.
No, so this is built out of the existing site designs. So that is not going away. I want to make that very clear. All we are doing is that we are two things. We are giving them a new surface area. So before, the only way that you would be aware if your organization was using site designs, you would only see them available during site creation, or if the site owners serendipitously went to settings and would see the site designs, which we know based on user research that a lot of users didn't know what site designs meant, and so click-through rates were low. So all we did is, we said, hey, let's give it a new surface area that's more prominent and more useful, as well as Microsoft decided to build our own set of starter sets because we talked to a lot of customers and a lot of these scenarios are very common across organizations. And so we said, hey, since we're already going to be building our own to help our users out, let's make sure that the customer built ones using behind the scenes site designs and site scripts show up there as well. So no, like that is.
It's a branding and naming change, not a deprecation of anything existing, right?
Correct.
Yes. Cool. Now, we did have something for 20 minutes, didn't we? I'm just worried about checking the timing. There was a section number 2. So was there?
Oh, yeah.
Yes. I think we can go ahead and move on then, if that sounds good. So I will hand this over to Melissa and Matt to drive this discussion.
Yeah, so I hope you guys, I see a lot of questions and we'll try to answer them after this as well. But I hope you guys are excited to kind of general direction that we're headed with templates. Not only us providing our own, but as you can imagine, a lot of the stuff that it took. So behind the scenes, actually, how we built our own first party templates that you're seeing today that Nicole demoed is actually building off of site scripts and site designs. So we are using the same tech we expose to you that we tell you to use for your own templates. We're using that ourselves to create these templates. And so, but we're now looking for, hey, obviously there are nuances for the difference between when it's created from us versus when it's created by your organizations. And so we have some questions that would help us. We're in the middle of thinking about the next stage of what looks in this space. And so we have some questions that we'd love to run by you. So also here on the call is Matt.
Hey guys.
Matt Moody, who's one of the engineers working and thinking through these questions. And so, yeah, we wanted to just have a discussion. But so I'll start the question off, and then if folks can add comments, that would be super helpful. So the first question is, one of the things that is interesting about templates, particularly when you consider pages in them, is that a page is made up of all the elements within it, right? You can have a page that points to a list. You can have a page that points to images. So one of the things is, in what ways do third-party web parts, like the web parts that you get build for pages, reference SP objects like other sites or lists or images in files?
Some examples might be a server relative URL, or the 4 GUIDs that uniquely identify a file: site ID, web ID, list ID, and then file's unique ID. But I'm looking to see if there's any other formats that you guys use, like graph URL, stuff like that. Like, what other formats do you use?
Or is this something that you guys don't really think about? I think we stumped them.
Yeah, maybe. Oh, okay. Okay.
Let's give it a while. So it's just I think we'll have a lot of customers and partners in this call who've been using PnP in the past and then referencing what is being there, because it's being used by tens of thousands of tenants every single month. So
sure, I'll ask the question again. Oh, sorry, Vesa.
Yep, no worries. Feel free to ask it one more time. Let's be clear. Yeah.
So Russell, I totally understand the web part properties. You can store most anything, and so I'm trying to find out what is typically stored in the web part properties right now, just because some solutions might work better for certain types of properties, and other types of properties might not work so well. So the question is, in what ways do third-party web parts store references to SPO objects like sites, lists, images, and files? And a couple of examples might be, do they reference them by the 4 SharePoint IDs that uniquely identify a file, like site ID, web ID, list ID, and file's unique ID? Or do they do server relative URL, or maybe something a little bit different, like graph URL? Like, how exactly are they referenced by the web part? And I'm seeing some answers: planner ID and bucket ID, GUID. I'm assuming GUID being those 4 SharePoint GUIDs, or just a GUID to a site. List by title, the 4 GUIDs. For lists, there's also the actual list view. Okay. It took a second for us to get any answers, but now we have about 20 or 30. That's great.
You want to move on to the next question?
Yeah, I think so. Thanks, guys. That's really helpful. The next question would be, so this is even deeper dive into the implementations of your web parts. So please forgive me if we're making you think a lot about this stuff early in the morning. But this next question is, are the references to the SPO objects like sites, lists, images, and files stored in a consistent location in the web parts properties JSON blob when you compare 2 instances of the web part? And has it changed often with different versions of the web part? So for example, in the image web part, we have a spot where it points to the image source. And that's been in the same spot in the property bag for as long as I can remember. I'm not sure if it was ever in a different location, but I want to know changes often for you guys. Russell says it changes, but not often. Does anyone need clarification on this question? Okay. So when you've written up your web part properties, are they? You have a certain property that might point to a file, for example. Do you, in a later version of that web part, or maybe in a different mode of that web part, do you have that same property just gets moved to a different? That same reference to a file gets moved to a different property? Does it change a lot? So that same reference might be in one or more locations.
It sounds like for most it changes, but just not often enough.
Robert, I think I'm specifically talking about within one type of web part. So I totally understand it'll vary by web part. I never expected different web part authors to be consistent between each other. And yes, adding a new prop, that's slightly different than moving it. Adding a new prop is totally fine. Thank you, Jim. Yeah, so I'm not worried about the value. We're just worried about the name. So Russell, by moving it, you could say in version 1 of the web part, the image was stored in the image source property, but then in version 2, it was stored in the image URL property. So you just change the name of it. Okay, perfect. All right, and then let's see. Okay, we still have a lot of answers coming in. And then the last question is, when creating a template, if we grabbed the supported assets and added them to the central asset repository by default, would this work for your solution, for your web parts? So for example, if your web part had a reference to an image file, and we went and stuck that image file in the central asset repository. Oh, and I believe I'm using an outdated term here. I'm sorry, I'm a dev, not a PM. I'm not always up to date on the lingo, but I think it's organization asset library. So if we took that file and put it in the organization asset library, would that work for your web part, or is there an issue with that would come up if we did that packaging of the files?
If I may give a little bit more detail on this particular question, we're thinking obviously of you guys being able to create your own templates. Your templates might contain assets that you want, like Matt just talked about, like images on a page, or document templates for the document library, or a file template for a document library. And so we're thinking about what's the easiest way to do this. And if you envision with us when you're creating a template, your own customer provided template, your own custom template, if we just kind of said, hey, let's take those things and put them in the organizational assets, or what you see here, central asset repository for you.
Sorry, I used an old name.
Yeah. Would that work?
So I'm hearing some questions about, what about security? What if that's a sensitive file? So I'd like to dig into that a little bit. If you're taking a file and making it part of a site template that might be accessible to the entire org when they're creating a new site, what is the scenario where there would be a sensitive file in that template? I think a user would be able to access it by creating a site as it is.
And to be clear, when we're thinking about because I think Pontus made a really good point. I can see that asset library grow out of control as the one single location. Right now, we're thinking about it for starting with SharePoint admins. We think about it as a different solution for hub owners, which is the other layer that we think about, and then for individual users. But starting with SharePoint admins as the first delivery of this, ideally they would have enough know-how to not go crazy on creating a bunch of these, and to your point, making the assets library too big. So Kip, great points. So the idea of ARG assets, yeah. So how we're thinking about it is Org assets gets it's basically a designation on a site, right? Like you point to say, hey, this site is where your org assets library is. We wouldn't put it in the same library as all the, where your corporate images are supposed to be. We probably created a separate library. Imagine we call it like templates library or template assets library but on the same site. So I hear you. We don't want a dirtying, like, you might have some images that you just want for the template, but that doesn't mean you want it to be available in all the image pickers. But that's a really good point. Would assets be tagged or organized into folders? Mike, that's a good question. We haven't gotten to that level of detail yet.
So Carlos, I think the goal here is if we're creating a site template, there has to be a location that we're pulling these assets from when creating a site from that template. So one possible location you can imagine would just be the original location of these files, right? But if the original location of these files is some site that the tenant admin made just to make this template and he didn't share it with anyone, then the user might not have access to actually download the image to the new site and start using it. So that would be a little bit problematic. Of course, we could elevate, but then we're elevating permissions commonly. That's no good. So we need to find a place that's accessible to the org in general, so that we can store these templates and allow new site owners to access these templates and these assets when applying a template to a new site. Paul, that's a great question. So I think what if this is not set up yet was Paul's question. So that's a great question. I think I brought it up a couple of weeks ago, actually. I think we would have to, there's a couple solutions to that. We haven't decided which way to go. Do we, force it to get created, or do we tell you, please go set this and then you can start using these templates? Either one is a potential option. Still exploring.
So, I know we're close to time, but if hopefully you can probably infer based on these questions that we're thinking about. One of the we're thinking about, and a couple people actually posted this as questions at the top. Now that we have this first-party templates that we built for our users, we had to build a lot of functionality in order to build those, and so we're looking at how we extend that functionality so that customers can build their own, and hopefully you guys can leverage your own here. And so, but when we open this up, then questions like, we need to support the third-party web parts. And so a lot of the questions that Matt was kind of referring to was to that. And then we have to figure out a way to take the assets for your particular template and make sure that they're in a place that, can be applied over and over again. So this really helps us. I know these questions are kind of detailed, but just gives you a little bit of a signal. And, we're starting to think about how to expand what we built out for the first-party templates to you guys. And we have some questions, and these questions really kind of help us act and give us confidence that we're heading in the right direction.
Cool. So the last slide that we have here is just a resource slide. So this includes the support documentation that you had already seen. So that's the aka.ms/sp site templates. We also published a blog post and a podcast episode with Mark Cashman last month. So you can check those out by just adding blog and podcast to the end of your aka.ms link. But wanted to thank everyone for having us demo to you today. And thank you, Vesa, for letting us join you on the call.
Absolutely. Good, really valuable discussion and discussion on the defining the future of these capabilities. And it's quite actually rare that we have this level of a discussion in a public course, which is really nice as well. So having everybody from the community to contribute on the designs. Now, we are running out of time. So that was Melissa, Nicole, and Matt. The recording of the session will be available in the YouTube channel within 24 hours in the Microsoft 365 Community YouTube channel. You can follow us on Twitter if you're on the developer side of Microsoft 365 Dev, and then the community side on the Microsoft 365 PnP. The next Microsoft 365 General Development Call is on June 10th, so later this week on Thursday. Thursday, 7 a.m. Pacific time. The next Microsoft Teams monthly community call on Tuesday next week at the same time. And the next SharePoint Framework is on June 17th. The next SharePoint monthly community call, not going to happen, as we are going to have that summer break, and then we are consolidating the calls. It doesn't mean that we will not talk about these things. It just means that we have more consistency around the calls throughout the month. And we'll certainly share more details after that, after July and August, or July-August timeframe. Right now, you can find all of the existing community calls from the AKMS M365 PnP site. We'll update all of the links, we'll update all of the things as we roll out the new model as well. Right now, this month, we'll still have Adaptive Cards community call coming later this week, actually. Teams next week, Office add-ins coming as well, and Power Apps coming as well. And then the bi-weekly ones are going to be executed throughout the summer. So that's why they have stars behind of them. So some changes, some adjustments in here as well. But thank you everybody for joining today. Really, really great discussion, super valuable for defining the technical implementations or at least providing input on the technical implementation, what will be happening in the future. And really cool demos from Nicole related on the functionality as well. But thank you everybody, stay safe, have a great rest of the week, and maybe we'll see you on Thursday's Microsoft 365 developer call. Cheers, bye-bye.